Hi, I'm Arati. Last weekend we took an overnight trip into the English countryside, driving from West London via a nice pub to Dorset. We found a nice dog-friendly Airbnb, and the next morning I woke up super early to find it was pretty icy and rainy as per usual in November in England. Nevertheless, it was toasty indoors and I took out my little travel kit that I brought with me to do some sketching before my husband woke up and we went out for the day. There was plenty of inspiration right outside the patio doors, so obviously I was drawing the trees that were around us in the forest. We are very close to the Avon Country Park, and even though civilization is never very far away in this part of the UK, we were isolated enough to have complete silence and nothing to hear but the occasional odd bird here and there. I was told there were rabbits around. I'm sure my dog could smell them, but we didn't actually see any. I spent a really good 40 minutes doing this sketch. I will show you the finished sketches that I made on this trip as well as the art supplies in my kit later on in this video. This Airbnb was so well stocked it even had a book on cats in art. It wasn't a huge book, but the pieces in it were quite interesting and they were all taken from the Bridgman Art Library collection. I did notice that most of the images were of traditional art. There wasn't any unusual sort of representation of cats. I think it's just a basic book that has pretty pictures of cats in it, don't get me wrong. But if you're looking for artistic depth, you might not find it, but there's a good amount of information about each picture. By this time, it was quite light outside and it was still raining, but now that we have a dog, we don't really care what weather it is. We're out and about all the time. There was an access to a part of the Avon Country Park, just 2 minutes walk down the road, so that's where we went. It has a very interesting selection of foliage, mostly brown, given that it is November. Things are dying, going into winter, going into hibernation, but there was still color to be seen. Even though I may not always draw nature representing it as it is, a lot of my work is influenced by the colors in nature, the shapes and forms that I see, and it sparks my imagination like nothing else. Just look at the colors under my feet, the grays, the browns, the creams, the whites, and then next to me, all these greens, the yellow of the gorse, the russet of the ferns, and then look at the texture, look at the depth that I can see even while I'm walking around, while my husband and dog patiently wait for me every time I'm filming or looking at something in detail when we're on these walks. We walked for more than an hour, then went back to the Airbnb, dried off, and headed down to a pub for lunch. My husband was kind enough to volunteer to film a little bit of what I was sketching there, and of course it was my eternal muse and model, our dog Sam. We spent a good few hours there just sitting and chilling, and it was really useful to have the travel kit because I could just dump it on the chair next to me. It wasn't in the way of anything and I could still access all my stuff. After that refreshing little overnight break, it was time to head back up the highway back to London. And now that I am home, I can show you exactly what is in this little travel kit. This is a waterproof case with a carry handle and a double zip. It holds quite a lot, as you will see when I open it. This case is easily available on eBay and Amazon. I'll put a link down in the description for you. This has a built-in little thing attached where you can put pencils in that's not removable, but there are also two inserts which attach with Velcro that I did remove that I didn't really need for this trip. These ones have slightly wider bits that you can put thicker pens in. There are 3 so-called pages of those and then 1 of thinner ones which fit regular pencils and pens. So let me show you how a Posca pen fits into this, like so, and then it still has enough space to put a relatively thin pencil in with it. So you can really maximize the space in this when you're carrying stuff around. There are quite a lot of pockets zippable in this. This one goes all the way to the bottom. I had my camera batteries in this one while we were traveling, and then they all zip so it's secure, and the second one just has a little bit of kitchen roll in it just in case I needed to wipe up anything. I would probably utilize these far more on a longer trip. I didn't really put that much stuff in it this time. It also fits an A5 sketchbook. This is the Royal Talens Art Creation sketchbook that I took with me, and because I took out those 2 flaps, there's a whole bunch of space here to just chuck pens and whatever you want in it. Again, I was going on a really short trip just overnight and I didn't know how much time I'd have, so I didn't take any paint or anything. So in the back of it also there's another sideways zip pocket, and I had a sharpener with me as well as a kneaded eraser. I did take the Lumos pen with me in this zipped pocket, but for some reason one section of the double-sided pen leaked, so I actually need to figure out whether I overfilled it or what I did with that. So as you can see, there's a bunch of markers, and then in the front section there are pencils, which I wanted to keep a little bit more safe and secure and not rolling around in the back. I'm going to swatch all the colors that I took with me so that you can see my color palette and every single pen and pencil that I had on this trip. So first up is a lovely bright yellow from Posca. It's the number 2. They do have names, but they've just got the number on the end of the pencil for these ones. Then there's Derwent Lightfast Deep Rose LF2, a lovely color for rose hips and things like that. The third one is the Luminance number 159. It's a Prussian blue, but it's not as dark as paint can be in pencil form. If you watched my tour of Jackson's Art in Fulham, you would have seen me buy this Derwent Graphitint in Ocean Blue number 07. Next is Posca number 39. It's just a mid blue really. I thought I could do skies or something with this, but I don't think I ended up using it at all. It was the same situation with this Neocolor 2 in golden yellow. I just took it along for, I guess, funsies, as well as the white. I did use the white, but I did not use the golden yellow very much. I don't know if it's coming across on camera, but white does show up on this cream paper fairly well. This is one of my favorite pencils, the Holbein Artist Pencils in burgundy. OP080 is the number. It's just a slightly darker version of the other burgundy shade I have. Then it's the Faber-Castell Polychromos in indigo, which I'm not going to put in the blue column. I'll put it in the blacks and deep grays kind of column because I do use it as a substitute for black sometimes. Another indigo, but this one is from Posca and it's number 9, and you can see that it's quite different from the Polychromos dark indigo in that it's much bluer. I really enjoyed this Luminance number 140, which is ultramarine. It's good for adding a pop of color, whether it's birds or a human element like a jumper in the distance or something like that. The other side of this flap has more of the colors that I used in the sketches that I'll show you in a bit, and they were far more autumnal colors. Derwent Lightfast in light bronze, number LF1. Really nice. Oops, did that on the white there, forgot. But anyway, and a Luminance number 842, which is raw umber 10%, which is a really interesting color. Very versatile for highlights and adding lighter shades when you don't want to use white. Moving more into greens now, this is a Posca number 7. It's a really kind of sap forest green mix. Derwent Chromaflow in Deep Sea number 1320 has been getting a lot of use lately. It's one of those blues that kind of goes with everything and it complements the other colors as well, and I really like the profile of the pencil. Posca Black number 24, again an essential in my kit. You can see how short it is, and it's a really nice black, more charcoal than deep black. I will sometimes substitute it with deep indigo. The Luminance 548 is kind of a greeny color. It's actually raw umber, but I find it's more green than brown. Another purchase from my art supply shopping video, which is the Derwent Graphitint in green grey number 9. Absolutely love this. The Caran D'Ache Museum Aquarelle in white is not going to show up, but it's one of my favorite pencils. It's actually water soluble, but I never actually use it that way. I just use it as white. It goes on top of most things. Coming back to the browns, this is Luminance number 906. I haven't used it a lot, but I think I will because this is a color that's super versatile. It would be really nice with the indigos and the blacks also. Can you tell how much I love Luminance 739 Dark Sap Green? By the size of this pencil, I'm gonna have to buy a replacement very soon because I'm constantly using this thing. This Luminance Black in 009 is also a similar situation where I use it a lot, but I do have other blacks. You can see here all the short pencils are the ones I use the most compared to the ones that are not that used. It's mostly the Poscas and some of the Luminances as well. I don't think you should listen to people who say having black in a palette is not a good thing. Each black has different qualities and I use them for different things, and this Luminance one is much darker than the Posca one. That looks more like graphite. I did also bring one pencil along with me, which is the Pitt Graphite Matte in 14B. I've said before how much I love this pencil, and it's really lovely to draw with. So those were the pencils kept safe and secure, so the leads didn't break, and so they weren't really rattling around like the pens are. I actually had a Tombow mono eraser in this one, as well as a white bullet tip Posca pen, a kneaded eraser, and I also had the Jacquard sharpener with me. The white of the Posca pen shows up quite well on this very creamy paper of the Royal Talens sketchbook. The Winsor & Newton Promarker watercolors are lovely. This one is SAP number 599, and these are pretty versatile because they've got brush as well as a marker tip on the other side. The indigo is my absolute all-time favorite. It's number 322. Sepia 609, another very versatile color, particularly in this color palette. It matches up with some of the pencils, and so is raw umber, which is 554. The cadmium yellow number 109 is even brighter than the new color there. Now we're moving on to the Tombow pens. This is number 026, kind of like a dull gold. You would probably get that in ginkgo leaves when they start falling off the tree. A deep green, number 177, essential for this autumnal kit. And then number 192, which is a slightly different shade of green when you want to add variation in landscapes. The third one is then 228, and these all go very well with the sap green from Winsor & Newton, as does, well, this one should actually go over here, which is 027. 098 is more of a brown, but I would say it's a nice darker shade of that goldy color. These two can really be layered on top of each other to create really nice effects. Then we have a number 899, which is a deep brown, and 757 to go with the burgundy pencil version. This is just a bit deeper and darker. 925 is an orange I don't use very often because it's very bright, but it works well for autumnal berries. It also goes well with this next peachy shade, which is 912. 992 is more of a peachy shade, but I would put it in the more kind of brown shades for this particular color palette. When you look at these shades in particular, you can see how an autumnal forest would develop. And then 990 is actually just a slightly lighter shade of that. Let me just put this in this column now. N79 is one of the most versatile grays. I think I've gone through 2 pens already this year. One shade darker is N45. N60 is more of a blue-gray color, slightly periwinkle. And then 528, again, a sort of mid-blue to go with these blue pencils on that side. I chose this palette very much at random. It's just the colors that are on my desk that I have been using lately, whether it's in odd orange or just in my sketchbook. And we were only going away overnight, so I didn't fuss about it too much. Didn't even know if I would actually have time to draw something. Speaking of which, let's go back to my sketches. This was the first one that I did. I was just sitting there calmly in my dressing gown, having just woken up, probably just had a glass of water or something, and just looking out of the window and seeing and looking and actually paying attention to what was out there. It was so enjoyable that I do want to do this on an everyday basis in the new year. Just waking up early and sitting and sketching. This next top piece I did after we came back from our walk. It's a composite of my dog Sam, who was just wandering around in the garden, and the trees behind him. I kind of disappeared the fence behind and decided just to do his funny little face as he was poking around, just wandering around in the cold out there in, like, I think it was maybe 1 or 2 degrees centigrade, and he was just poking around doing his own thing and eventually did come inside. And this is how he lets me know he wants in. While we were drying off after our wet walk and before we went to the pub, I had time to think about the stuff I'd seen and observed the textures, the colors, particularly the yellows and the pinks in the florals. This page is just full of things that stuck out to me. The walk was all about observing textures, like look at these colors. These are the colors that made an impression in my mind during that hour-plus walk. The textures, the feeling of the path we were walking on with the tree roots sticking out and the browns and the grays and the green of the grass. And that's what this sketchbook page was about, is my impressions of the walk that day and the things that I observed on it. Plants with berries and bright color, lots and lots of yellow gorse. That Winsor & Newton Promarker watercolor was made for this gorse. It's just such a beautiful color in that brown and green landscape, and then the red of the rose hips and pine cones and everything. And then I did notice a lot of blue-green lichen and moss on all the trees. It just shows you exactly how damp this area is. I don't know if you'd call it a temperate rainforest, but it's very, very damp. This is something I'd really like to explore and draw more of. After that, we went to the pub and I ended up drawing my dog. Sam was begging for food. As per usual, we don't really give him much of our dining table, but when we go to pubs, sometimes he gets stuff. But I used the color pencils to sketch him. I'm quite pleased with some of the details I managed to capture. I think the sleeping position he held the longest because he had just gone to sleep and I was able to sketch at leisure, whereas when he was begging, he was moving around a lot, so he changed angles a lot. By this point, the rain was really coming down, and even though we'd finished our meal, we just sat and my husband ordered some dessert. It was like this egg-looking thing with honey inside. It's pretty cool. And I just sat there and sketched my hot water and the rest of the table. This is very sketchy. It's just like a still life. I didn't really do much introspection like I did with this piece, which is actually my favorite piece of the entire trip. So you can see from my sketches that I tended to stay more in the brown and green section, with just a few pops of color here and there. So even though I took so many colors with me on the trip, if I had to whittle them down to a limited color palette from within this, then I would go for the Luminance Black, then the Luminance Deep Sap Green, the Faber-Castell Pitt Graphite Matte, Derwent Chromaflow in Deep Sea for sure, that beautiful watercolor marker in Cadmium Yellow, Tombow 228, which is a neutral green, Tombow 026, that lovely gold, an old staple N79, and there you have a micro palette within this larger autumnal palette. Now for your convenience, screenshot this if you want all the names and numbers, and here's a little bit more of a detailed look of everything that is in my travel kit. I will link all the different types of pencils for you in the description box below. Don't forget to check that out, and please comment and tell me whether you have any of these colors, whether you like the color palette, and what you thought of this video. Let's just have a conversation. I'm going through this slowly so you can take notes, and at the end here is our limited palette. Now I've underlined all the colors which are in this limited palette in the main thing. I really enjoyed taking the sketchbook out. Here's a quick flip through those drawings again, ending with my very favorite one, I think. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!